It's up to each and every one of you, my highly trained Stratonites, my killers who will not take no for an answer, my fucking warriors who will not hang up the phone until their client either buys or fucking dies!
Each semester I begin my analysis of lit and film class with a simple question. What is your favorite movie and why? But this time a student gave a curious response. Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street. Now I too enjoyed the picture, but for what turned out to be much different reasons. The student thought Jordan Belfort was awesome, a hero even. I asked him to elaborate and he continued with how cool it was that Belfort started from nothing and got everything in the world. He seemed to describe the American dream in some strange way, but Belfort, at least to me, seemed to be the antithesis of the American dream. Of course, I was troubled by its disconcerting critique, but at the same time, fascinated. But still, it got me thinking, does Wolf of Wall Street glorify the hedonistic lifestyle Belfort championed, or does it instead offer a scathing condemnation of him in our materialistic society? Further, how much of ourselves and our personal desires do we bring to the forefront when critiquing or consuming a narrative? So with these questions in mind, let's take a look and figure out The Wolf of Wall Street.
But you, Jordan, you got this way all on your own.
Did I?
Good for you, little man.
Little man.
Good for you.
Me, the little man.
And let me tell you something.
The Wolf of Wall Street follows the life and career of Jordan Belfort, a power-hungry stockbroker who seems to only be satiated by sex, drugs, and money. Belfort rises to power through aggressively selling penny stocks using boiler room tactics. He openly rejects the traditional values that were instilled in him growing up, and shamelessly admits that all the crooked means that brought him to the top were wrong. He just doesn't care. Even at the expense of his friends and family, Belfort will harm any and all who stand in his way to power. I had only seen the film once casually, so watching a second time critically, I was surprised at what I saw. The glorification of excess is abundant. Everything from the cinematography to the soliloquies of the unapologetic anti-hero Belfort screams excess. And arguably, many instances do indeed appear, at least at a surface level, to be glorifying the abundance of sex, drugs, and money that flood Jordan's life. The film's plot also seems to agree with the tone established by the visuals. How much is Belfort really punished for his actions? He has a brief stint in prison, but even that isn't looked down upon by the anti-hero. Stepping outside of the world established by Scorsese, it's easier to identify the negative outcomes. His drug addictions, failed marriages, losing custody of his children, and betrayal of friends. But the tone of the film hardly conveys any of this as particularly devastating to Belfort, or explicitly anyway, that it should be devastating to us as viewers. In fact, Scorsese chooses not to hammer home any of the personal or societal consequences of Belfort's actions from a third perspective. But does that necessarily mean it's condoning Belfort? I'd still argue no. A strong film shouldn't act as a cautionary tale. It shouldn't be a capsule to insert a singular political or narrow perspective to shove down the audience's throat. In my mind, such attempts, no matter how noble one's intentions may be, are propaganda, not art. True art instead asks the viewers to critically analyze and decide for himself the tough ethical questions the narrative poses. And again, I would argue that's what Wolf does, and it does it well. There's no doubt Scorsese is one of the greatest living filmmakers, and while his filmography isn't perfect, I think he's beyond spoon-feeding the audience his point of view. Scorsese uses irony in juxtaposing a man who is little more than a leech with that of images of partying and indulging excessively in what so many define as the American dream. But it really is excessive, and I mean excessive. No matter how high Belfort climbs, despite his speeches claiming to the contrary, he doesn't ever seem to achieve any happiness. Elation, yes, but happiness, not so much. While Belfort may be an extreme example, perhaps the film says more about our society and ourselves than we'd like to admit. We're constantly bombarded with materialistic and dehumanizing media that suggests happiness comes from our own personal rise, even at the expense of others. We eat it up and dream of living lives of luxury. I don't want to simplify the desires to rise above one's situation, nor do I want to simplify the obvious personal benefits one has when he achieves this. But neither does Scorsese. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. Maybe the reason why this narrative of true happiness being synonymous with self-indulgent success is so enticing is the amount of truth there is to it. Money buys things. Things elate us. People like fancy cars. People like big homes. People like to be praised. There's no denial of these facts in the film. Belford is constantly elated, as anyone would be if they had the amount of money and power he has at their own fingertips. But elation and happiness are not synonymous, and it seems that this pursuit of money and power doesn't have an endgame. At least it didn't for Belford. But it was a vicious cycle, one that persisted no matter where he was, in the tiny companies in which Belford began, on Wall Street where he thrived, then in prison, and finally, by the end of the film, where Jordan Belfort becomes a motivational speaker, once again milking the masses for all they're worth. But let's take a look at the final shot in the film. Belford's audience is captivated by this man who ransacked honest people like them, all for his personal benefit. They are more than likely aware of this, so why are they there? I think this speaks to the truth of most people. At the end of the day, we are opportunists who desire the same things as Belfort. While our selfishness may pale in comparison to his, the truth is most of us care little for people beyond our own circle. It's a tough pill to swallow, and one that people wouldn't take, unless maybe they were presented with the good, the bad, and the ugly of Belford's lifestyle. Scorsese's final shot fixates on the audience, staring in admiration at Belford. Perhaps this audience is a surrogate for so many of us, but it's important to remember the pursuit of happiness was nothing more than a vicious cycle for Belford. Likewise, if we share his values and further attempt to carve a similar path, the cycle will not end for us either. So I think back to my students' comments on the film, and I don't feel nearly as critical of his perspective as I initially was. What 17-year-old doesn't desire money, power, and escapism? At that age, you're on the verge of independence with little in hand. The happiest moments of your life are with fellow weekend warriors, indulging in escapism by various means that may resemble a fraction of Belford's parties. You lack the experience and development to see beyond your own limitations or point of view. I don't mean to generalize, but those truths would have certainly been the case for me at 17. So perhaps in a few years, that student may see the film a little differently.
You know, Jordan, I'll tell you something. Most of the Wall Street jackasses that I bust,
Or perhaps not.
they're to the manor born. Is that right? Yeah. Their fathers are douchebags.
There's still plenty of aspiring Jordan Belforts in the world.
When the Bureau seizes this fucking boat, because I mean, fuckity fuck, Jordan, look at this thing. It's beautiful. And you get the beautiful girls there. It's wonderful. All right, get the fuck off my boat.
Hey, you guys want to take some lobsters for your ride home? Fucking miserable pricks. I know you can't afford them.